This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, today Bernard Drinville, our new education minister, unveiled a plan that's a little short on a plan. Marc Tanguay, now the interim provincial Liberal leader, commented. I just want you to hear his take on this, and then we'll talk about it. Brian?
We still have a lot of questions. He doesn't even know how many teachers are missing, are lacking within the education system. And for instance, for this example, it talks a lot, it speaks a lot with respect to the fact that we don't have the answers to very important questions and we don't have a real plan.
Yeah, but other than that,
the
right?
dog ate his homework.
You know what? He talked about seven different principles, but there's really, they say the devil is in the details. There are no details.
Well, there are no details. Most significantly, there's nothing that with a dollar sign in front of it, or if you're writing in French, with a dollar sign after it. But here's the thing, Aaron, writing in French. The only reason we're having this conversation, the only reason Bernard Drinville is in the news, the only reason the Legault government is paying more than some sort of token passing interest towards the education system in Quebec is because La Presse reported that the written French results of every school service center in the province, school service centers that were created by the Legault government, is awful. They essentially they failed. I think almost every single service center had like a failure rate. Some of them, except for three, I think, and some of them the failure rate was at 50%.
Yeah.
Now listen, I'm not gonna point the finger at my Francophone cousins because I know French is a very difficult language to write it. I'm pretty well bilingual, but when I try to write in French, Aaron, it's like a small dog is trying to write something. I have, there's all those apostrophes and the dashes and the whole nine yards and the accents. Don't get me going on the accent. Yeah. But all that said, what are Bernard Drinville's priorities? Well, first and foremost, promote the French language. Okay? And I hope this sinks in with not just our listeners, but a lot of Francophone parents out there who are going to realize, your kid's education isn't really top-notch, but by God, they're going to be able to write, my education isn't very top-notch in French from hell or high water. They want to bring in more teachers. Monsieur Drinville, whose previous life, his experience to be education minister was he was a journalist, which God help us all, is not, I can tell you, is not a real ministerial, prerogative or necessity. He wants to bring in more teachers. He doesn't know how many because he doesn't know how many teachers we need. Okay? He wants to increase educational projects within schools, but we're not exactly sure what those projects are going to be. And this is an oldie but a goodie. He wants to continue renovating schools. I think when I first got on this show, like a decade ago, they were talking about renovating schools because they were spending billions because half of them then and half of them now are falling apart.
Yeah.
But let's not get...
How long have we been talking about at least, the last 8 years about renovating schools?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you said 8 because this is not just a CAC problem.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, maybe this time of day it might be a bit early, but any teachers who are listening to this show right now or listen to it at CJAD.com are going to just be punching a hole in the wall because they realize that the only time anybody in Quebec, especially this government, but anybody in Quebec, pays attention to the state of the education system is when something goes embarrassingly wrong for the government. And this is what happened now. And as I said before, this absolute fiasco, this exploding souffle in the faces of François Legault and his cabinet over these French written results. And remember, these are the same men and women who are moving heaven and earth to ensure French is protected by keeping Francophone students as far away as possible from anything resembling an Anglophone college, making sure that Anglophone colleges do not expand. Because let's face it, Aaron, I've learned my lesson. That's how you promote French in Quebec, is you limit the amount of English language education that's available to everyone in this province. And I'm so glad to see that when Bernard Drinville came out and essentially, I can't think of another way to say it, presented his so-called plan on what is more than, I think, just a metaphorical cocktail napkin, I think it's a really good wake-up call. One of several that I'm sure the people of Quebec will be receiving over the next few months over just what this government is about, and more specifically, what it isn't about. Because without a pandemic, which, by the way, is being blamed for the lousy French marks, because school was out there for a while,
right?
Which also poses the question: because the entire educational system collapsed because of the pandemic. I know that sooner rather than later. But yeah, bottom line here, I wish Bernard Drinville a lot of luck. I'm not sure whether he sought out the education portfolio. I'm sure that compared to his predecessor, he's going to be doing a good job, even if he never shows up for work.
Yeah, it's a pretty low bar.
Well, yeah, I know. But in the end, we're talking about the future of Quebec. In the end, we're talking about how smart or not, or committed or not, or inspired or not, Quebec is going to be in the next 10 or 20 years. And right now, the future does not look very bright, Aaron.
I will tell you my favorite line in this Bernard Drinville story today, in the Radcan story, is Mr. Drinville will make announcements for each of the priorities at a later date to explain how he intends to do so.
Yeah, it's
my favorite line.
Once they give the dog a Heimlich maneuver and get the homework back, he'll be able to fill in the blanks. But of course, I'm having fun here. So is the opposition. And this is not a good way for this government to be kicking off its next term.
Agreed. And you're right. I mean, this idea, hiding behind just happened to be a pandemic. And yes, it's a bit of a smokescreen for the party in power because they didn't have to do anything but focus on that for the most part or get called out for anything. Yeah. Those days are gone. I think it's going to be a whole lot more interesting in the National Assembly now when they reconvene than it has been for the past 4 years.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that for whatever reason, Bernard Drinville has basically been off the grid since he was named to this portfolio. It's been 3 months. And he's been off the grid. He has not given any press conferences. He hasn't given us any updates. And I always say, don't call a press conference when you got nothing to say. But I think he was kind of handcuffed to this because it's the caucus meeting and this is supposed to be unveiling the bold new CAC Quebec of tomorrow. Well, it's bold and maybe new, but I'm not really sure it's going to last past, say, Saint Jean Baptiste Day this year. Because if this is what's happening in education, and we've already had a little taste of what's happening in the healthcare system, as I say, it's going to be a very interesting ride for François Legault and company over the next.
Plus, public sector unions, I think, have their deals up coming up in about a month or so. There are a lot of very unhappy people in that sector. This is going to be quite an interesting session.
Can you imagine the temerity of the education workers unions turning around asking for more money? Yeah. In this context, and saying, and if the government turns around and says we can't afford it, well, which side of your mouth do you want to talk
exactly?
Because it's either a priority or it isn't.
What was the deal today as far you wrote a headline that says, where else but in a secular Quebec can a health minister be compared to Pontius Pilate? Did I miss something here? What happened today?
It's our good friend Eric Jane. He was talking about this, and it's quite controversial because Christian Dubé, health minister, wants to create something called, I think it's called Agence Santé,
right?
Which is French for the system isn't working, so we want to staff out the management to somebody else, okay? And the opposition, and indeed Monsieur James, are saying this is going to allow Christian Dubé to hide under his desk, because if there's any more screw-ups, he'll say, it's not me,
right? It's
the other guys over there. You'll have to talk to them. I'm just the health minister. But I just love how, these New Testament references keep popping up in Quebec, because what a lot of people don't know, and I didn't know, and I sort of found it out by accident, many politicians in Quebec went to private schools. They got, and of a certain age, they got something like a classical education, and you'd be amazed how many of them actually refer to like Latin references and stuff. They don't do it out loud. When talking amongst themselves, it's like all they're missing is like the little mortarboard hat, right, and the robes. but this is the thing. So this is completely different kind of vernacular that they use. But I tell you, when somebody's saying, Pontius Pilate, it's 2023, here's a politician comparing another politician to Pontius Pilate, I'm thinking,
God save secularism. That's all I can say.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adama.